Hey, everyone. Hi, welcome. Just got a few more people that are coming in. See some faces from All Souls, which is wild. Folks, if you want to type into the chat or unmute yourselves and say hello, where you're coming from or where you're calling from. And then maybe one thing that you've done for Earth Day, just as we're arriving here, that would be great. Feel free to type that in the chat or name it out into our space as we're arriving. It's good to see some faces I haven't seen in a while.
Hi, I'll speak. Hello. Hi.
Hi there, Doris.
Hi, Doris, yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. I was on this call once before. It's been 6 or 8 months, too long, but I'm really glad to join you all again. And I'm in Virginia, in Central Virginia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I hesitated a minute. I thought, what did I do for Earth Day? Actually, the day of Earth Day, the calendar day, this year was pretty uneventful for me, and for reasons, whatever, it was just, I didn't really do much. And what came up, not only in a group that I was participating in Sunday morning, a regular movement group, and some other thing that the piece this year that I feel has been bigger than anything else ever before is that it's always Earth Day. That, interesting, like my movement group, Sunday morning group, this woman said, it's interesting, we have a day for the sun, a day for the moon, a day for Venus, a day for Mars, and once a year there's an Earth Day. So we decided at our dance that every Sunday is going to be our Earth Day. And then I'm hearing other things from all over. It's like, this is our home. It is always Earth Day. And really in my heart, that's how I feel. I live on a big rolling farm in Central Virginia. And, I am so nourished on a daily basis by the earth that I can, and the beautiful rolling hills that I see every day from my bed in the morning. And I'm grateful for it every day. It gives me, it's part of what enables me to stay grateful at least every day for something. It can maintain a gratitude practice. Is this beautiful earth and being aware of it, and the trees, and really acknowledging every day. Like right now we have tiny little violet flowers that we've been picking in salads and chickweed salads. And so the gifts of the earth are so plentiful, and I, may I continue to always be grateful every day. And may we all, when we start looking at Earth Day as like every day. Anyway.
Thank you for that, Doris. Appreciate it. And I feel like there was an echo of that in the chat as well. On Anna Churchill from Massachusetts says, every day is Earth Day, so I didn't do anything special, which is really sweet. And looks like Jan McGuire from California, every day I walk and pick up litter. Beautiful. Little things add up. Hi. Great. All right, well, feel free to continue. Oh, Crystal, I see your hand waving. Do you want to just say hello and where you're calling from for those that are new or may not have? Oh, I think you might be muted still.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm coming from the unceded territory of the Arapaho and Cheyenne. Some call it Denver. And we had a really special day on Earth Day, organized by 350 Colorado. We had a big picnic at the state capitol with music and art and speakers, and then a march down to the Federal Reserve, where we had a rally there, seeking to want fossil fuel canceled, the end of fossil fuel. So it was really a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And 350 Colorado provided excellent food for everybody. So,
Yum. Thank you, Crystal. We have Satish joining from Mexico. Thank you, Satish. Can you give a wave? I think I have the Zoom fatigue here. There you are in yellow. Hi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us all the way from Mexico.
And I'm planting a garden.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Could you say that again?
Planting a garden.
Oh, not sure. There is audio coming through, but I'm not sure I'm hearing you quite well enough.
Did you say that you spent your Earth Day by tending your garden?
Yes, planting a
Woo,
garden.
Skylar. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Skylar, for your keen hearing and interpretation skills. Welcome all. Grateful to have you here. I believe we will be joined by Matthew shortly. And so I guess we'll go ahead and kick the meeting off, and just to sort of give you a brief orientation to what our hour will look like. We'll start with an opening with Skylar. We have a special guest today, one of the founding members and co-authors of Order of the Sacred Earth, Jennifer Wilson is here. And so we'll be hearing an update from her as well. We'll do some updates from the order, and then we'll move into council check-ins, and then end with a closing prayer and send off into your evenings, wherever you are. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Skylar for our opening.
Thanks, Mariko, and good to see you all. So many, some familiar faces. Good to see you, Anita, Jesse. Anita and Jesse have been joining almost every time for the last 3.5, 4 years, something like that. Yeah, good to see you, Don. I'm a little concerned that Matt's not on yet, but hopefully I just sent him a text, so hopefully he's okay. So here's a prayer from Starhawk that I published in the newsletter this week. But for those who didn't get a chance to see it, I thought it was very potent. So, but before I sort of recite the prayer, I invite everyone to close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Just take some deeper breaths, dropping into your body, into your hearts, into this space of connection with this global community, with yourselves, with the earth. And just noticing any place where you can soften, any place where you can receive and open. And my son Jonah will also be making sounds to bless this space. So Starhawk says, may all the healers of the earth find their own healing. May they be fueled by passionate love for the earth. May they know their fear, but not be stopped by fear. May they feel their anger and yet not be ruled by rage. May they honor their grief, but not be paralyzed by sorrow. May they transform fear, rage, and grief into compassion and the inspiration to act in service of what they love. May they find the help, the resources, the courage, the luck, the strength, the love, the health, the joy that they need to do the great work. May they be in the right place at the right time in the right way. May they bring alive a great awakening, open a listening ear to hear the earth's voice, transform imbalance to balance, hate and greed to love. Blessed be the healers of the earth. Aho.
Great.
Oh,
Thank you, Skylar, Jonah, for that beautiful, beautiful prayer, grounding, and I think just the bubbly joy, child magic that we need in this moment. I was really feeling that heaviness and the tiredness, and that sort of parallel with that innocence and just that energy, that authenticity that comes with being a child, just really kind of spoke through. So thank you. Great. And so I guess at this point, we'll move over into Order of the Sacred Earth updates. And I guess we could turn it back over to Skylar and possibly Jen to lead us into this next piece while we're waiting for Matthew. I just sent over a Zoom link, so hopefully he'll be joining soon. So I'll pass it back to you, Skylar. And Jen, if you would like to step in.
yeah, thank you, Mariko. So I don't have much personally to update everyone on with the OSE. Just for those who are new, this space and the OSE at large is, I think of it as a hub or a network where there's no one running it. It's a place where people can find resources and share what they're doing and be nourished, and hopefully find places to put their love and action to work, or to play, work and play. And so one such example is what my wife Jennifer is doing, which is she works at the Rainforest Action Network along with Mariko. So it's that organization is very well represented, as well as All Souls here tonight. But I'm gonna switch off and give her some space with you while I take my son off, so that she can give an update, because she was just at a prayer vigil today that was on behalf of supporting the Rainforest Action Network and the work to influence the banks that are funding a lot of the destruction of the rainforest, but also the fossil fuel industry at large and climate change. So that's an update that I think will be worth hearing. And then after that, after she speaks, then we'll open it up for a sharing, and I'll let Mariko take it from there. So Jen.
Might hear a little bit of separation anxiety in the background, but hi everyone. Super nice to be on an OSE council call after I was just realizing almost 3 years since I stepped back in OSE leadership, specifically because I was hired at Rainforest Action Network and needed to focus on that work. And I always had the intention of integrating my work there with OSE. And then life kind of got away with me with the new baby and the pandemic and moving. And but yeah, really happy to be here today, particularly in the context of, as Skylar was sharing, this action prayer vigil that I participated in today, and also because this is the council immediately following Earth Day. So I wanted to set a little context about my work there, starting with Earth Day. I also agree every day is and should be Earth Day. And also the theme for the global celebration of Earth Day this year, some of you are probably aware, was invest in our future. And that was a particularly poignant theme for RAN and a lot of the other environmental activist organizations we work with, because while we do fully support and uphold the importance of our individual time and resource and money investments in creating a sustainable future, one of the main pillars of our work is about holding, as Skylar mentioned, these banks and other financial institutions accountable for their investments in the fossil fuel industry and how that is literally before our eyes contributing to climate chaos. And so while we do believe in individual investment in the planet, we also believe that as importantly, and maybe at this moment, more importantly, the divestment from these massive, powerful corporations is key to curbing climate chaos. So I want to share a little bit about the action today. So today, specifically in this world of activism, we call it Super Tuesday. This is because it's the annual shareholder meeting season for most of the big US banks who are some of the main investors in the fossil fuel industry. And today was the shareholder meeting for 3 major banks. And I'm realizing I have a ton to say about this, so I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible and also down to answer questions after. But so today, the Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank all met in their annual shareholder meeting. And why that's particularly important is this is the one time a year where proposals are introduced to these corporations and either passed or not. And this year, there were a record number of proposals across US banks to stop the funding of further fossil fuel expansion, which is huge in and of itself. So we showed up today to the Bank of America headquarters in Charlotte, along with representatives, including a friend, an ally on OSE who I didn't know was going to be there, and people from Sierra Club and Extinction Rebellion and 350. Crystal, so cool to hear about your recent action. And the whole thing was organized by this organization called Green Faith, which I want to get into a little bit more in a minute. And we were there in front of their headquarters with 2 primary messages. One was protesting Bank of America's investment in Formosa Plastics, which is a massive petrochemical company. They're expanding their operations in Louisiana in this residential area that is now known as Cancer Alley, because people who live there are 50 times more likely to have cancer than the national average because of all the toxic chemical production that's happening there. Bank of America is one of their primary financiers. So we were protesting that. We were also there to support and to show our support for this proposal that was up for vote to end financing for all fossil fuel expansion. We didn't know this at the time when we were there, but we found out later, it's about 7:30 almost here in East Coast time, that the 3 proposals that were up today on Super Tuesday had between an 11 and 14% approval in their voting. And I first heard that and I was a little bit crestfallen, wow, that's not even close to 50%. Wow, this is kind of scary. But actually for us and our allies, this is a huge win, because it wasn't that long ago that this type of proposal wasn't even available in the shareholder meeting. So the fact that they're even on the docket is huge, but really that, there's something like 55 million shares of Bank of America. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who voted yes on this proposal to stop financing fossil fuels. And these aren't just people. This is, as Skylar mentioned when I was telling him about the action today, this is people who are in the belly of the beast. These are people who are investors in these massive corporate banks and probably in many ways buy into capitalism and all the destruction that is created by it. And even 11% of them today said, we need to stop. And for me, that's a really encouraging sign of the shift of consciousness that's happening right now, even in the mainstream. And so that it was really, really beautiful to be there and be in support of this movement on this powerful day right after Earth Day. I think my main desire to share with you all today and the relevance to this group, just to circle back, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Green Faith, this nonprofit activist organization. And I'm seeing maybe some smiles. Maybe y'all are familiar with Green Faith or involved. Bonnie, awesome. I just learned about them today, actually, and was so excited. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your anyone's experience with them. But yeah, this is a multi-denominational, faith-based group of activists. And today there were representatives from many different faiths. We had Buddhist prayers, a Native American opening of the directions, Christian, beautiful songs. And what struck me the most is the amount of intention and heart that was a part of the action today. So RAND's actions tend to be very escalated. We do really high risk and even like legally questionable protests. We'll like block off an entire, block of banks and, do these murals on the streets, or we'll lock ourselves to one another, creating a barrier to the entrance to a bank so customers can't get in or out. Just last summer, our executive director locked herself to the Line 3 pipeline while it was under active construction for 10 hours and then was extracted and detained in jail overnight. I've seen, hundreds of people put red paint on their hands and put like red handprints all over financial institutions' walls. So that's the energy I'm used to relating with in this activist space, is like really intense. It's about anger, which can be powerful, but it's also about blaming and pointing the finger. Today was completely different. Watching the guidance of Green Faith, it was a vigil. It was about prayer, and it was about love and connection. And I teared up several times. We had, it was really centered on art. So we had these beautiful banners. I was part of holding this massive puppet that was representing the sun. We had another one representing water. And if you all have been following Matt Fox for a while, you know that we love massive art puppets and use them a lot. And so I was moved personally, but I also saw a distinct difference in how we as activists were received today, where I'm used to being there and like seeing, passerby kind of look away or even get angry at us. We did this around lunch break. So people were coming out and sitting and listening and watching. And I saw people getting moved by what was happening. And I also, at the end, I was flyering. So I was passing out little leaflets that had more detailed information about why we were out there. Usually when I do that, people just kind of like turn away or like, avert their eyes or make a rude comment. But today people wanted to learn more. Like they were coming up to me and asking for leaflets, like, when does that happen? Or at least like interested and would grab one from me. And then the kind of like cherry on top of all this was we had connected with some of the executives at this Bank of America headquarters in Charlotte to let them know that we were going to be there today and why. And at the end of it, two of the execs came down into the courtyard and very graciously received this massive booklet, 50,000 signatures on a petition to stop their funding of Formosa Plastics. And it was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was an interaction that was full of compassion. There were like all these Green Faith activists and all our banners and puppets, and then these two executives in their business suits, and they were listening and smiling. And they took this book of signatures from us. So I wanted to bring that here to name that was always part of the vision of OSC for us, was not just the bridge between spirituality and activism, but actually how vital having a connection to the sacred and to the heart and to our various forms of spirituality is when we are acting on behalf of the planet, and how much more the mainstream and everyone can receive our message when it's coming from that place of compassion and connection and love. And that vision was totally revitalized for me today. participating there. And then I guess one more thing I wanted to share that maybe you all, so a few of you on this call looks like might be able to speak more about, is that Green Faith, like OSC, has what they call circles. That kind of reminds me of our pods, where if there's a group of people that meet relatively consistently, you can become a Green Faith circle. And one of the things that they offer to their circles is trainings and resources on how and when and where and how to safely get involved in these big action movements. So I thought that might be an interesting, at some point, maybe down the line, conversation for OSC about how we might link up with Green Faith a little more directly. So that was a lot of information and rambling, and thank you for giving me the mic for a little bit. And yeah, just really happy to see you all. And as I said, happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I feel so inspired and like just energetically activated by everything that you've shared. It's so powerful what we can do when we sort of drop into our inner knowing and slow down a little bit. And I saw a lot of faces nodding in solidarity just now. And I'm wondering if we want to just take the next 5 minutes to do a quick Q&A. I see Bonnie was like, yes, like very emphatically. I don't know if you'd like to share. So why don't we go ahead and open up the space for questions, comments for Jennifer. Bonnie, go ahead.
Have a Boulder Circle here in Colorado. And on Earth Day, we did something that I was unexpected, which was meditating. And we were meditating in intense wind. I don't know if you know that we've been having intense winds here in this state. And it was so powerful to be connecting with each element in a circle of people while all this wind was just blowing around us and with us. And then we went over as the Green Faith Circle to stand with the Fairview High School students who were on the corner with signs, saying, like the oceans, we must rise, planet, not profit, things like that. So that double, spiritual piece and active piece is really important to our circle. And I've been a part of Green Faith International and the Green Faith Circle for about 4 years and participating in many of their programs. So I was so excited to hear from from Jennifer. Thank you.
I hope those winds are the winds of change. We've been feeling them a lot here too, and feels like movement and messages and signs.
Wonderful. Thanks. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? It does feel like there's a lot of movement and just general signs from the earth. I think I've been noticing that a lot myself too, is if we just drop in and listen a little bit more, there are a lot of messages that are coming from the earth herself around this change within ourselves and beyond. And Matthew, I say welcome. I think you're muted still.
Yeah, thank you. I had trouble finding the link to get on today. So anyway, Jen, it's great to see you. And thanks for that, for your work and for your beautiful telling of the story. So one question I have for you is this 11 to 14%, how does that compare to, did you get any information about that to previous attempts like this? In other words, is 11 a pretty good number, and then the next stage you can expect 22 or something like that? Or what do you know about how that translates into effect? Because it is true. I mean, like what's your name said, that a small minority can change and scare these big corporations. So I know it's really not about 50%. I think, but I don't know what the number is between 11 and 51%. But anyway, did you get any instruction about that or information?
Yeah, I just got that number like right before this call, so I don't have that much information, but what I understand from, I connected with our organizing manager. When he told me the percentage, I literally, without having a lot of context, was like, oh. And he kind of corrected me and said, no, that's huge. Like, I'm not even sure if we were in the percentages before this year in terms of approval ratings for proposals like these. So I think it is a massive leap. And my understanding is kind of the organization is taking it as a win, and that we do expect hopefully by the next year, we're going to see exponential increase in that approval. And then also just to mention again, if I'm not sure if I said this, that this year had by far the most climate related and fossil fuel related policy proposals of any year. Like, it's been, a handful in the past, and there were, I think, 15 across US banks in the AGM season this year. So it's I know it's a little hard to wrap our head around those numbers, but it is a good sign. And when I also think about just like the sheer quantity of shareholders of these massive institutions, that's hundreds of thousands of people. That's a lot of support from people that I wouldn't expect to be even like thinking about banking in that way. So,
And of course, it's not all just people, it's also institutions like schools,
institutions,
universities and all that. So
yeah. Although I don't think the Berkshire Hathaways and the BlackRocks are the ones voting for approval for these proposals yet, but maybe by next year.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? I saw a few people go off mute. Let's see, I saw Joanne, Bonnie. Did anybody else I just want to be mindful of time. Also, we're about halfway through our call together.
I had a comment.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just was excited to hear what Jennifer was saying about Green Faith. And actually, one thing I'd been thinking about before coming on the meeting tonight was that I've noticed, like, I found OSE through, I think it was a newsletter for Deep Green Resistance, which is a newsletter I'm on. And I'd been looking for something like this group for a long time. And I feel like since I found this, I've noticed a lot of other stuff popping up. So like people are saying, it feels like there's a lot happening in terms of earth spirituality, and that being something that's kind of emerging, I'm noticing. So in addition to OSE, now I've learned about Green Faith, and I also learned about another group called Gaianism. I learned about just in the last month, which was really seems very similar to just like in terms of focus to OSE. And I also noticed I live very near Harvard University, and they're having an Earth Spirituality conference this week, which I thought was really neat too. So I don't know, I just wanted to comment that I feel like there's a lot out there, and it'd be really interesting to see some of these different groups collaborate and come together, because it feels like there's a lot of little pieces, and what could we achieve if we all connected? So that's all.
I was wondering if anyone from San Francisco had an update. We were there about a week ago, and a friend of ours was telling us about 350 San Francisco that had gathered people together who had accounts with Chase Bank. And the movement was to pick a certain day when everyone would gather, and they would say, if you don't divest, we are divesting from you. In other words, they would cancel their bank accounts or credit cards or whatever it is they have with Chase. I wonder if that event has happened, if anybody lives near there or might know about 350 San Francisco and their efforts.
I can comment. I don't have a ton of specific information, maybe Bonnie does, but because Chase is our primary target as well. And I believe their AGM is at the end of April. So I would imagine that action would be happening also in tandem with their shareholder meeting. But I can also probably find out more on that and maybe include it in a follow-up or on the OSE Facebook page. Bonnie, did you want to share something?
I just wonder if this group knows about thirdact.org, and Elders Climate Action. Both these organizations are cooperating on targeting 4 of the major banks and asking people to sign a pledge that if by the end of the year they have not divested from fossil fuel, people will take out their credit cards and their bank accounts. So you can actually go to spelling it out, thirdact.org, and sign a pledge. There are 2 pledges. One, if you are part of one of those 4 banks, and one if you aren't, saying that you won't do business with them. And, I think that a lot of these organizations are doing sort of their own brand of Stop the Money Pipeline, Green Faith, these 2 other organizations.
Awesome. Thank you, Bonnie, for that update. I am blown away every time I get on one of these calls, the connections, like, of how similar the thread is and how different, but yet, like what you were saying, is like, if we could all come together with our resources, we really could affect some serious change. Because, I've heard like 3 or 4 different organizations, and what would it be like to come together and unify? So if you do have resources that weren't named just now, feel free to use the chat. We do try to send those out afterwards. So if there's something that you're looking to connect with someone, make sure you're using the chat. Yeah, great. And if anybody has any questions for Jennifer after the fact or wants to connect, I'm sure we can get her information to you. Cool. And so I'll share a quick update because it feels like it might actually be a nice transition. I personally am not involved in it directly, but this week and next week, there is the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues that is happening in New York at the UN headquarters. Earlier this year, I found out that my Ryukyuan or Okinawan ancestry is actually technically considered Indigenous by the United Nations. And I had to confront a lot of colonization and, confront a lot of my own identity questions around who I am and what I can claim. And so I've been relating to this forum in a new way that I hadn't before. And so through this particular forum, I've learned a lot about how Indigenous peoples are really at the front lines of this type of climate activism. It's sort of weaving it all together. But one of the pieces that is a huge issue is the consent of Indigenous peoples. And I'm going to drop a link in really quickly, is the informed consent and the support of Indigenous peoples in stewardship of the earth and the lands that they're on. And so I just wanted to take a really quick moment here, sort of bracketing. So Jen spoke about sort of holding, big banks and sort of the corporate world accountable, and sort of simultaneously, what would it look like if we were pushing and supporting and uplifting our Indigenous communities across the world as those sort of gatekeepers or the people, the wisdom holders of how to truly relate to the land, to the earth that we're on. So I rambled a bit there, but wanted to share that very briefly. Feel free to check the link out. And if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to share a little bit more offline, but I do want to be mindful of our time. I know Matthew has some updates as well, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to him at this point. Oh, and I think you might be muted, Matthew. There you go.
No, really, I'd rather just hear the rest of you. I came on late and I'm sorry about that. But I actually have a question for you, Mariko. First of all, I think that's really exciting that you're getting more into your own roots and that you're connecting at the United Nations. Both of those things are pretty big. Can I ask, in Japan, is your is the history of your people as disturbing as it is in Canada and the United States for people here? Have your people gone through that kind of disenfranchisement and everything? Have you lost your language and your ceremonies? How much trauma have your people been through? Is it like what has happened in the Americas?
Yeah. Sadly, yes. And I think my own inability to relate to that is like proof of how effective that colonization has been. And actually now that I'm relating to it, like my own mother, what was so ashamed of, I don't want to speak too much of her story, but I didn't inherit a lot of the things because of the trauma that she went through. So Okinawa, a lot of times people will compare it to Hawaii, in that it had its own indigenous language, its own culture, and then went through, had a history of basically double colonization where Japan invaded or annexed Okinawa in the late 1800s, and basically wiped out the language, and then like the language, the culture. And then in World War II, if anybody knows that history, Okinawa was one of the most bloodiest battles, strategically chosen by the Japanese to kind of do double duty in the sense of eradicating a people that were expendable. And so basically like a third of the population was totally annihilated, and they were civilians, women, children. And actually this is the time of the year where we go to the graves and we picnic and we clean, and we celebrate. And if anybody's interested, I'd be happy to share it, but there is these really profound images of people hiding in these family tombs from soldiers when the US came in World War II, and then to see those same tombs being like cared for now, fast forward 50 years, which really isn't that long ago. Yeah. So yes, sorry, I could talk forever about Okinawa and the colonization that we've gone through. But one of the biggest issues that the indigenous peoples of Okinawa face, in addition to the language piece, the cultural piece, is that about a third of the land mass is currently occupied by US military base. There is a very controversial relocation of a base, a US military base. This has been happening for about 50 years now, where they moved a base to a rural area, and they are actually building out into this very biodiverse coral region. And the Okinawan community has said no, so many times over, but then they get steamrolled by the Japanese government because of the agreement that the United States has with Japan at the expense of the Okinawan people. And this is actually an interesting sort of segue of the political pieces. So while the UN recognizes Okinawans as Indigenous, Japan has not, because if they do recognize us as Indigenous, then we would have articles that would give us a certain right to the land, which would allow us to claim the land back. But then that would move the bases off of Okinawa and probably into Japan, and Japan doesn't want that. So that's my very rough sort of story timeline. I'm sure a lot of historians could probably do that a lot more justice. And yes.
Well, thank you. I'm sure I learned a lot. I'm sure a lot of us did.
Yeah.
Learning more. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Yeah, thank you for your interest and for the time. If anybody would like to connect with me afterwards, I'd be happy to share. There is a podcast, I'll drop a link. There's a podcast that a couple of women that I've connected with and I have put together. And there is a woman that's actually doing coverage right now, attending the UN forum on Indigenous issues and sharing her experiences live. And it's really fun to see. It's heartening sort of to take a little bit of Jen's energy. Is it is very exciting to see Indigenous peoples all over the world coming together and finding solidarity, common trauma, common issues, but uniting and moving forward to effect significant change and figure out how we can move forward together. Yeah. So I'll pass it over to you, Matthew. I feel like I've taken a lot of time here.
Well, I was just gonna, since this is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, I was gonna invite people to kind of meditate on water and to think of stories you might want to share about healthy water, what it's done for you, your encounters with sacred water that's still sacred, versus, toxic water. And of course, when you look at it historically, what really started, and by the way, I heard an NPR interview on this today with the person who was talking about, and he said, that the Clean Water Act was one of the most important and effective legislations that has ever happened in America. And it was across parties. And but it grew out of the fact that literally in Ohio, rivers were catching fire. And I remember that back in the 60s. And that was kind of the beginning of it, but that it really was effective. It really was solid. It really was well thought out. And that we need a new one today. And the biggest single problem today, two biggest single problems today are one, agriculture. That agriculture is pouring so many fertilizers and compounds and chemicals into our springs that go into the rivers, that go into every place else. That's number one. And number two is cities where so much concrete is inviting all this pollution into rivers and oceans. But I just thought it might be appropriate to ask people to just tell stories about their encounter with sacred water in your own experience.
Yeah, I can start. I worked for 32 years for the state of Connecticut and the Department of Environmental Protection, trying to address those water pollution problems, and the urban problems are indeed huge. A lot of it comes down to people's awareness. The average person has no clue that things that they throw on the pavement end up in the rivers and the streams. And a lot of like catch basin stenciling is good, but monitoring programs to make people aware of the problem are good. Another thing related to climate, though, is that a lot of people don't realize that water conservation, the water that you draw out of your tap, requires a lot of energy to deliver and also to treat at the end. So movements to conserve water will result in a lot of benefits to the climate. So I can answer any questions that anyone wants to talk about stormwater and non-point source runoff, but it's a difficult question.
Thank you. You certainly are the guy to speak up. 32 years. Yeah. Skylar, water was big in your life, I know. As a kid, you spent a lot of time on your father's sailboat. Maybe more time on water than on land.
I was just remembering, a couple of things. Well, just to respond to Chris's message, like I took a water resources development class at Penn State. I was only there for a brief time, but they said that 80% of water is lost in the piping and evaporation from source to tap. So 80% is lost. So it's, when you think about that, it's not when you're saving a cup or even just like, and I'm saying this as someone who likes to take long showers myself. So I'm just putting that out there, that I'm owning that. I'm a water pig in Chinese astrology, and I find that to be accurate. I'm a water pig. But I was also thinking about, we did a cosmic mass in Asheville a number of years ago. Actually, we didn't put it on, but we participated in it. And I remember my son, whose name is River, partly because we felt that he was this flowing, gushing, had dreams about this like river flowing into us. And So we had to name him River. But we were doing this water blessing as part of the mass, and River started, he was a baby and he was on my lap as I was like, we're going around and we're each blessing this sacred water, and River starts drinking it and dumping it like all over himself. And I was like, well, that feels like as much of a blessing as any. I guess that's referring to, I guess he carries some of my water piggishness, but on Earth Day as well, or the last few, I mean, it's really my regular practice is to jump in cold moving water, the ocean, or we're lucky to have a few really amazing waterfalls and streams and rivers around us. And it's one of my spiritual practices is just to jump in all times a year, to jump in to cold water and just commune with it and feel connected to my truest nature. So if that's, just want to offer that as a practice, that jumping in cold water, although it hurts in the beginning, it's one of the biggest releases that I know, and ways to cleanse my energy and just connect to life. So that's my share. Thank you.
Water is a big issue in Wisconsin right now. The lead pipes in the city of Milwaukee that are bringing lead tainted water to homes where many, many children live. Wausau, Wisconsin has been drinking bottled water for a couple of years now because of the foam that the firefighters left there from their testing, and they've left these permanent, what do you call them? And PFAs or PSAs or whatever it's called, but it was caused by the foam, the chemicals that were left there from testing firefighting equipment. The Lake Michigan, there's at the Straits of Mackinac, there is an oil pipeline that is underneath the water. It is deteriorating, and the company that runs the number 5 pipeline needs to replace it. And the Native Americans and as well as many others are fighting the replacement of that pipeline because it may easily, have oil in the water. The city of Waukesha has radon in their groundwater. They had to have pipes built to bring water from Lake Michigan all the way out to Waukesha, which is about 30 miles worth of pipelines to get the water out there so they could have fresh water instead of radon infected water. Water is a big issue in Wisconsin. One more issue. In the north, there's the pipeline that goes through a reservation. The Native Americans said, we need to have that pipeline taken off our reservation for fear that there will be deterioration. And so the company is going to put it around the reservation, therefore going through many streams and rivers and marshes, which then could be polluted. We need to fight that effort as well. So water is a big issue.
That's all in spite of the fact that we have the Fox River and Fox Lake.
Hi, I'm Don. I'm with the Champlain Order in Shelburne, Vermont, and we sponsor every year with a number of other faith communities a Sacred Waters event that we hold on the shores of Lake Champlain. And we tend to do that in a place where the water is very pristine and beautiful. But on Earth Day, I found myself preparing for a tradition that we hold every year in Vermont on the first Saturday of the month. It's called Green Up Vermont, where we go out to clean up the environment. And so we're preparing this year to participate in a cleanup in downtown Burlington. There's an old abandoned barge canal that is a Superfund site. It's completely contaminated with coal tar, much of it finally the kinds of corporations we've been discussing tonight. And so as I began pulling together the equipment that we'll be using for that cleanup day, it just struck me that that water in that contaminated canal is just as sacred, just as worthy as that pristine water that we bless on the shore of the lake every year. And it just moved me to remind ourselves that sometimes we need to take ourselves out of that comfortable place of beauty into the areas that most need care and love. So there are 3 other members of our pod here tonight, Dave and Sue and Brother Francis, and we are delighted to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Don. And so good to see the All Souls Lake Champlain Order of the Sacred Earth here in such numbers. Thank you for all that you do. I think we have time for maybe one more sharing. And I saw a hand. Was that Anita?
It was Anita, and it's not exactly the sort of thing to close with.
Okay.
But, you know, because he was mentioning places that need care and love. I live in such a place. I'm deeply, deeply affected by it. I come with a lot of grief tonight, and it's intensifying in many ways over this conversation. It's not that I don't want to know about all the good stuff going on, but I think that the negativa is really, really important, and the suffering needs to be taken into account in a different kind of way. And so that's why I want to say something, because I came tonight feeling that grief with intentions to support around it. And somehow this whole layer just feels totally left out. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Anita. I see you and I hear you in that.
And what needs to happen, right? If this is true, and I'm saying this, is that I need to be reached out to. Other people need to be reached out to, not just wait for us to volunteer. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm wondering if there is a way that that we can support you in that. And I don't think that that's going to be, solved in the moments that we have left, but would love to continue to keep that conversation or that channel open to supporting you and others and other communities that are in need of reaching out to. And yeah. So I think with that, we'll move into our closing. We're about 8 at
I just want to, I know that we're close, but I just want to add one thing to that. And just to say, Anita, I really do hear you and want to, if there's any way that we can be a channel for you getting the support that you need, that's what we want to be. So it's a conversation that needs to continue. And yeah, I appreciate you continuing to share that.
Well, I don't know how long I can continue to share that. I need other people to reach out and to join me, to join in others, to actually become active about speaking, not just speaking this, but doing this. I have been engaged in this group. I am engaged in another group, and the same kind of issues are there, where talking about is fine, but this kind of action isn't happening. So anybody who wants to be in touch with me, I'm here.
And one more thing that I wanted to say was to Chris's he corrected me personally about the 80% of water being wasted. And so I trust his, I'm really happy to be corrected in front of the group if you want to correct me before, I don't know if that's important to do at this moment, but I just want you to know that I'm open to that, and also do take responsibility for my water usage. I was kind of being a little bit crass in that moment. I have wasted water for sure, but it is in my conscience to conserve.
Can I ask what he corrected you about? The 80%, was that, what was the correction?
I'm not sure. You didn't say exactly what it's probably more of a versatile number that I don't know if that was actually the average or the worst case scenario, but I do remember my professor saying that, but I don't remember the details. Do you, no pressure to comment. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
I just think that 80% number is not accurate. There may be some areas like deserts where you get a lot of evaporation and there's a lot of loss. And there are some systems that are built with, excess in mind just to provide pressure to deliver. So it doesn't actually get delivered, but my outlet somewhere else. So it's not truly wasted. It goes back into a water course. I'd say probably 40%, 30%, depends on the area of the country and the age of the infrastructure.
Cool.
Those numbers would be high though.
Thank you for your expertise and for reaching out.
My other comment, which I think is a lot more relevant, I think, people need to take responsibility for what they can control. And, it's great to put the finger on the banks and the corporations, but, we're American citizens. We can control our own military, for example, which is the greatest climate destroyer in the world compared to almost any other nation. I mean, the US military uses more fossil fuels than most countries put together. And there's no talk about that because why? Because they're sacred. People need to take responsibility. We can control it. We're American citizens. We can go and vote and organize and get people to change our stance and demilitarize and change the way that we operate. But it doesn't seem to be that's popular. So anyways, thanks.
I appreciate that perspective, Chris. And if I'll hand it back to Mariko to close, but did want to, that it inspires me to offer kind of full circle for my share. And I agree that I really love the work that we do in holding corporations accountable, but there is something personally disempowering about that because I used to be more of an individual activist and like really pay attention to my choices and actions. And there's something exhausting about that, but empowering and important. So I would just bring it back to kind of this umbrella of having come off of the one nationally recognized Earth Day of the year and the theme of invest in our planet. And I want to take personal initiative kind of around this time when this conversation is so alive to think about the choices, the little choices that I make every day, the little shortcuts that I take every day that are harmful, and really consider how I as an individual and also right now responsible for 2 young kids, how I am making choices that either are investing in sustainability and a better future or are detracting from that. So thanks for that reminder. And I want to invite everyone, as that feels safe and appropriate to you, to also take that into consideration in your life after our meeting tonight.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for sticking a little bit over. I have a closing prayer that I'd like to send us off with. It's one that I've shared before, but again, just thank you for choosing to be here tonight. I know life is very busy, and we've talked about a lot today. So whatever you arrived with, whatever arose, I invite you to, you can close your eyes or whatever way you want to receive this and conclude our time together in this council, showing up exactly how we are and held in this space. This is a poem by Dolores LaChapelle. We give away our thanks to the earth, which gives us our home. We give away our thanks to the rivers and the lakes, which give away their water. We give away our thanks to the trees, which give away fruits and nuts. We give away our thanks to the wind, which brings rain to water and plants. We give away our thanks to the sun, who gives away warmth and light. All beings on earth, the trees, the animals, the wind, and the rivers give away to one another, so all is in balance. We give away our promise to begin to learn how to stay in balance with all the earth. Amen.
Thank you, Mariko. Thank you all. Good night. And yeah, bless each one of you. Bless the earth.
Thank you all. Be
Thank
well.
you. Thank you, Jen, Skylar, Rico, everybody.